Be perfectly honest with you guys, one of the reasons why I didn't review this Eddy and Eddy episode, even though it's a Christmas episode, is because back in 2000, it kind of makes sense onto why that they made a Christmas episode involving Eddy and Eddy, despite the fact that the episode itself is taking place in July. It really feels like that if you watch it right now, it's somewhat of a good episode, but at the same time, it just feels odd when you take into consideration that they've made a Christmas special that actually takes place in December. Here's the thing, when this episode aired in 2000, right around Cartoon Network were at its prime years, and even if you may say that they were still in those prime years in the 2010s, it really felt like that this episode's existence was just to give Eddy and Eddy a Christmas episode, but they need to make some serious sacrifices by having the episode taking place during the summer and not in the winter. I know that this shouldn't bother anyone because, for myself included, I didn't find this as an issue when I first watched it at a young age, but when I got older and the fact that this episode feels a lot more awkward to think about, it makes the jokes in this somewhat difficult to laugh at, even if they were from the classic days of Cartoon Network. I need to be real with you, like completely real with you. If an episode took inspiration from this, not from Christmas elements, I meant having an episode involving Christmas while taking place during the summer or springtime, even months after Christmas, it won't even work. Like, it just won't work whatsoever. In fact, that this episode was at a time where it did work because it's Eddy and Eddy, and Eddy and Eddy is one of those classic cartoons that really feels a lot more timeless, that even if you watch this episode, you wouldn't mind the issues completely. Like, even if you're a new fan of the show, you will probably be more confused, but at the same time, you will also realize that this episode is 22 years old. 2 decades and 2 years old. For me personally, for any teenager who watched this for the first time and is mostly confused, or if there was some chance that a child saw this for the first time, which is in this decade, they will probably have the same reaction as I do, and yet at the same time they didn't realize that they just watched a classic and not a modern cartoon. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. This episode is Eddy just scamming the kids as usual. It backfires on him, and then when it comes to the cul-de-sac kids having memories involving Christmas, this leads to Eddy coming up with another strategy to scam the kids' money as usual, but it ends up backfiring because Ed is spraying Christmas cheer too much. I honestly thought that he was being selfish, but at the same time, this is Ed we're talking about, and he isn't selfish. If you found an episode that made him unlikable. When it comes to this episode itself, it's average. Like, for someone who grew up with this episode, I have to admit that it gave me fond memories of Christmas itself, despite the fact that it's taking place in the summer. And for me personally, the rest of the episode somewhat make it up by having the scam work out for the Eds, but at the same time, due to Ed's charm and dumb personality, it ended up backfiring. And for me personally, it kind of made the ending of this episode somewhat justifiable. I mean, to give Eddy credit, this wasn't a really ruthless scam. Like, if he actually came up with doing Christmas activities during the summer on his own without the fruit cake that was in Double D's parents' closet, then I'm pretty sure that this is basically what Eddy would do. He would do anything by any means necessary. But since that he's fully aware that it's July and not December, it's no surprise that he was totally against Ed's stupidity involving the season of holidays. Besides, I understand that that's Eddy's character because he's being influenced by his brother, but to be real with you, it honestly feels like that the more I watch this episode, bits and pieces of it just becomes a lot more sense the more I get older and older. Besides, I can't deny of what Ed is doing is still part of his character. I just think that at this point, it really feels like that Ed can instantly do anything he wants as long as it's mostly good for the audience, and even though I'm not a fan of the comedy that he provides, that doesn't automatically mean that it's terrible when I rewatch it. As for Double D in this, since that he was originally going to destroy Jimmy's piggy bank, it really feels like that he's really ashamed in the fact that he's being scolded at by so many people. He actually gets extremely depressed. I need to be perfectly real with you. I understand that this would still happen even without the involvement of Christmas. It's still a lose-lose situation because Double D is always part of Eddy's schemes, not to mention the shenanigans that he goes through. If anything, it really proves to me that Double D is always in a predicament no matter what he does. Granted, I can't say that he wins at the end considering that he doesn't get a jawbreaker, but to be perfectly honest with you, this is mostly another lose-lose situation involving Double D, that he still loses even though that he wins if Eddy's schemes do work out in the end. But it's just due to stupid backfires that they end up getting, and the stupid backfire that they got was Ed being way too caring. In all honesty, this episode is only worth watching once if you're a newcomer. Seriously, you can watch the 2004 Christmas special because it really felt like an actual Christmas special, and they actually put some effort into that special compared to this. I'm just saying, you can make the argument that this episode is still a classic involving Ed and Eddy, but when it comes to Christmas classics, it's not even close. For me at least. Like, yeah, it's been 5 years since I last talked about the Jingle Jangle special, but to be real with you, despite my review being dated, it really felt like that it was the better alternative compared to this episode. I'm just saying, regardless if this episode is shorter and it's not a time waster, that doesn't automatically mean that it's a good episode from my perspective. With that being said, I'm giving this episode a 5.75 out of 10. Which is lower than Jingle Jangle, which I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 5 years ago. But to be honest with you, I'm not going to judge you if you consider this episode as a Christmas episode. But at the same time, when it comes to newcomers, I can still guarantee that they will probably be confused even if they become fans of Ed, and Eddy.